Welcome to Gleaning and Gathering. I'm your host, Eric Heimlich. Today, I am back again. There's lots that's happened, and I will not try to fill you in on it all. But it's been a month since I have sat down here at my desk to record a podcast. And so I wanted to do that and just talk about a few of the things that God's teaching me. This is gleaning and gathering. So it's what I'm gleaning, it's what I'm gathering, what's happening in my world, and I'm trying to just pass it along to some of you. I love good conversations, and I love it when I have the opportunity to be able to sit down with people one-on-one and just talk about what God is teaching them and listen to that, and then also share with them what God is teaching me. And so this is an opportunity that I try to take periodically to at least share some of those things and kind of scale some of those conversations. So it would be hard for me to have the 8,500 conversations with all of you that I have had over these past couple of years. But thanks to this medium, we've been able to share. So I hope that maybe you feel like you're sitting at my kitchen table and we're just talking, because that's kind of what's happening here. At least I'm sitting at my desk right now, and you are wherever you are, and we're learning together, hopefully. And some of the things that I'm learning, I'd love to be able to pass on to you. So in these last few weeks, I felt like that as I was looking on the period of time, like leading into May and early June, I was standing on a precipice. And I don't know if you've ever felt like that before. Like there are so many things just packed together one right after another. How in the world am I going to make it through it all? But I have survived and somehow come out the other side. And this next week, Lord willing, we are going to be headed off to Alaska as a family, and we are going to be ministering there, sharing there, and doing a variety of things there. But we're also going to just be making just a ton of memories. And it was 10 years ago that we took an epic trip. It was a month-long trip out to California, spent time along the way ministering different places. And it was just a time that we've never forgotten and just look back on as a family with fond memories. And so here we are 10 years later, and it won't be too long before several of our children will be flying out of the nest. And even though it'll be a long time before we're empty nesters, it may be a long time before we're able to do anything all together again as a family. And so we just really wanted to invest in a time to really make memories, but also to bless someone else. You know, the idea of us just going somewhere and blowing a bunch of money in an amusement park is not really our thing. And that's fine if that is your thing, but it wasn't really our thing. And so we wanted to find something that would also be a blessing to someone else. And so, Lord willing, we are going to be going to Fairbanks, Alaska, and we're going to be spending some time with some good friends there, working and helping and operating a vacation Bible school. And I don't know what all else we'll get into, but we've got some plans to do some fun things, but also some really great ministry related things while we're there. And so super excited about that. We're going to be flying up and flying back. And so several of our children have never been on a plane before. And so that will be an experience. The whole thing's going to be an adventure, and I'm really looking forward to it. But one of the things that I was just thinking about as we were looking at the Regional Student Leadership Convention, the International Student Leadership Convention, there was a lot of work that needed to be done with Heartland Christian School as we were finishing the school year, and then also the Nehemiah Discipleship Leadership Training Program, and then the Nehemiah Discipleship Program Experience. All those things happened between the first week in May and the 9th of June. And there was just a ton of activity in there, things that had to be prepared for, things that had to be done. And I felt like that there's just no way. And certainly moving forward, schedule-wise, we're going to have to think about some things in the future. It was not a good, well laid out plan. And yet it happened. And it happened one day at a time. And that's kind of the mantra that I had throughout that whole period. when I looked at the big picture, it was super overwhelming. And I thought, there's just no way. And yet, as I just lived that one day at a time, we made it. We made it through. God helped us. And it reminded me of Ecclesiastes chapter 3. And Lord willing, that's what I'm going to be sharing this weekend at the gathering. To everything there is a season and a time to every purpose under heaven. Then in verse 11, he has made everything beautiful in his time. There's a certain sense that in our day, there are a lot of people that are living with kind of two main worldviews. One is narcissism. It's all about me. I am the point. And the second postmodern approach to life is fatalism. There isn't a point. It's all just a big joke. And we're surrounded by a world and a culture that's communicating really those two main approaches to life. And the preacher in Ecclesiastes, he asks the question 3 times in the book that could be best summed up. What is the point to all this running around that we're doing? He asks the question there in verse 9, but it's restated really in 3 different ways in Ecclesiastes. He says in chapter 1, verse 3, what profit hath a man of all his labor? Chapter 5, verse 16, what profit hath he that hath labored for the wind? What is the point of all this stuff that we're doing? You know, if we're not careful, we're so busy with the cares of life that we never really live. And yeah, we have to make a living, but somewhere along the way, we need to live a life. And too late, many people realize that the way that we spend our days is the way that we have spent our life. Those are not two different things. It's not like, okay, I'm going to live my life in this certain way, and meanwhile, I'm going to spend each day doing something different. No, the way you are spending your days is the way you're spending your life. This is your life. You are living it right now, one moment at a time. And for some of you young mothers right now, that's one dirty diaper at a time. And it's one more sink full of dishes at a time. And for some of you, as a guy who goes into the job every day and gets off 8, 10, 12 hours later, it's one day at a time. Showing up day after day, day in and day out, doing those things that are there for you to do. And that is how you're spending your life. And you can't live in the past. It's gone. You can't live in the future. It may never come. But you do have the present, and it's this fragile, fleeting moment. But are you fully living in it? You know, as Christians, we see work as a good thing, as a blessing. God gave work to man before the curse. He gave him this command to abad and shamar. Those are the 2 Hebrew words, to tend and to keep this perfect garden that he had given him. And so he gives him this work where he can use his creativity, where he can use the skills that he has to use his intellect, his desires to make this something better even than what God had already given him. And so he spends his days in this perfect garden doing work, good work, life-giving work, work that is continuing to take a good thing and make it even better. You know, Irenaeus said the glory of God is man fully alive. And to live in a way that we are fully alive, fully engaged in the work that God has given us and in the place that God has given us and with the people that God has given us is a blessing. It should be all about God. God's glory is the point. The point of what he wants us to be about is to do justly, to love mercy, and to walk humbly with him. And that's the life that he intends for all of us. But how many times do we lose sight of that? Do we lose perspective? And I don't know about you, but I have a hard time many times keeping perspective in the middle of all the details. I get lost in that. This is what needs to happen today. And, oh, yeah, that's right. I need to run to the bank. And those are another set of things that show up on my desk that arrive in my email inbox or that arrive in my mailbox. And I've got that set of stuff to do. And meanwhile, the phone rings and there's this opportunity and that thing. And then where in the world was I again? What was I supposed to be doing? And in the middle of all that, there are these moments that sometimes are almost transcendent. They rise above, and they're beyond the scope of this world to fully grasp. It's those moments of pain and joy that are mixed together, and they're so great that it hurts. I was reminded of a couple of those. You know, it was 25 years ago, this next Wednesday, that I stood in a church in Rogersville, Missouri, and watched as those doors to the back opened and my beautiful bride came through those doors and began to walk down the aisle to the front where we would exchange vows and become man and wife. And I remember that moment, and in that moment, she was radiant, she was smiling, but as she walked down that aisle, the thrill that filled my heart was like a moment that I just wanted to hold on to. I wanted to have my eyes wide open. I wanted to see it. I wanted to remember it. I wanted to live in that, to be fully alive. Another moment that sticks out in my mind is a moment in 2006. My grandpa had lived his life well, but he was dying. And the family gathered in that living room around his chair, singing hymns as he breathed his last. And he went home to heaven. And in that moment, it was like heaven and earth had come together. It was beautiful, it was painful, but it was such a reminder to me of that scripture. Precious in the eyes of the Lord is the death of his saints. Wow. And as I watched that, I thought, I want to live like that, but I also want to die like that. Another moment that sticks out in my mind is the first time that I held each of my children. That first time that I held Kaylin in my arms as a new father, and the love that flowed through me in that moment for this little person that I had never met before was unlike anything that I had ever experienced before. And each one of my children, it's been such a blessing and so transforming to welcome them into our home, and then also to continue that process of nurturing and loving them. But that moment of introduction, that first moment where we met as they were born, was so precious. And God has made everything beautiful in his time. You know, there's a seasonality to life. And contrary to what the world is telling you, you can't be forever 21. And you shouldn't try. I want to encourage you to embrace the season that you're in and to live it fully for the glory of God. There is a seasonality to life. And this next month, as I turn 46, I'm feeling that. But that's not a bad thing. And so I just want to encourage you, whatever season that you find yourself in, to embrace that. Another thing that God's teaching me is just take time to listen. James 1:19 reminds us, let every man be swift to hear, slow to speak, slow to wrath. And taking time to just listen is an important part of embracing the day that we're in. The next thing is just take time to be kind. It doesn't cost anything to be kind, but it can make such a big difference in the world. And so I just want to encourage you to take time to be kind, and then to do the work that God has given you to do with patience and with all the skill that you have. Ecclesiastes 9:10 reminds us that whatever your hand finds to do, do it with might. And it's a lesson that I am trying to learn. There are things that God has given me to do, things that I need to be working on. And whether I eat or drink or whatever I do, I want to do it all to the glory of God. And so that means just learning to live each day to the fullest, doing the things that God has given me to do in that day, and not trying to borrow from tomorrow's trouble, just staying focused where I am. And so I just want to encourage you today in this short podcast episode as we are finishing our packing and getting ready to head out. But I just want to encourage you to live your life with purpose one day at a time. Times and seasons change, and many times we're left with the results of our choices that are made one moment at a time. And so I just want to challenge you to live a life without regret. Live life in such a way that when it comes time to die, all you have to do is die. That there is a time for everything, and that He will make everything beautiful in His time. For Gleaning and Gathering, God bless.